Hey, what's up, guys? I'm back with another Borderlands video, and today we're doing something a little different. We're gonna be reacting to Termex's video on Harlowe, which will be the Vault Hunter I will be starting with. And yeah, let's see what he has to say about the skills. Let's see what skills she has and how good she might be in the game. But yeah, I'll leave a link in the description for, the original video made by Termex. But yeah, let's see what he has to say about Harlowe.
Now, before we dive into this video, I want to give full creative credit to the YouTuber Brian Central, which I do believe was actually at Gamescom and was able to get some gameplay recorded in the entire skill tree for
Harlowe.
Really quick, I'm going to be maining this character for Borderlands 4, so if you like my content or just like how I sound, make sure to hit the subscribe button, stick around. I will be the number 4 source for all your Harlowe content. Harlowe, we'll figure it out when the time comes.
Harlowe.
But I do want to use the information that was in this video and kind of brainstorm my own ideas, because this is going to be the character I'm going to be maining in Borderlands 4. Now, the tree I'm most intrigued for is Green Tree, and I guess we're going to go over that first. We see you have maximum shield capacity, melee damage, status effect chance, pretty cool. Critical hit damage is also nice. Reload speed per entangled, status.
I don't know if you guys have noticed, but it looks like there won't be like one main Vault Hunter in terms of for melee damage, melee attacks, because all of the Vault Hunters have like a skill or some tree that contributes to melee damage. There might be like one who like the best at it, but it looks like all Vault Hunters can be or can have a melee build. But that's a good thing that they add in the game. But I don't think I'll be speccing into any any melee skills, because yeah, unless I'm doing a melee run, which I think will happen after I've completed all the Vault Hunters freely or made the best builds freely. But yeah, melee Vault Hunters, yeah, I think probably Rafa or Amon would be the best for melee. Probably Amon. Yeah, most likely Amon. But we'll see. We'll see what happens.
This effect chance being 100%. That one was one I did want to talk about. Hey, post-editing Termix here, just letting you know that I say Harlowe instead of Harlowe for this whole video, and I'm sorry. It won't happen again. Love you. Enemies inside Harlowe's flux generator lose all elemental resistances. Harlowe and her allies inside her flux generator gain increased status effect chance. This just seems really good. I don't know why, but losing all elemental resistances, does that mean if I phase lock a robot, does that mean I could use fire damage and it'll be normally effective? Or will it be weak to fire, or is it just like a flat stat increase? My opinion is it will just become a normal enemy and the fire won't be resistant. So that alone is pretty powerful. When we irradiate an enemy, she gains increased gun damage, and this effect stacks, which is, I don't know if it stacks more than 5 times. We would have to put a point into this to see if it increases the amount of stacks, but there's a lot of ways for Harlowe to naturally radiate an enemy. Even within this own tree, there's plenty of ways she can do so. Now, since these are augments, I don't think 2 can be on at once, so you have to choose between the strip resistances or this right here. And this makes your flux generator have a bigger radius, but if she re-triggers it, it creates a cryo hazard inside of it and a radiation hazard wherever she next places her generator. This, I think, is really cool, because not only are you going to make the radius bigger on it, I think more than anything, this is going to make a very easy way to spread cryo. And I almost want to say she's going to be one of the better cryo characters in the game, and in my experience, especially in the pre-sequel, being good with cryo is just a huge W when it comes to survivability and crit damage. But she seems more elemental with this tree, and I do not mind it that much. And as you can see right here, the skill right next to it, 50% cryo efficiency, which I imagine if you get a right class...
Yeah, okay, so it looks like Harlowe, with the skills that she has, a lot of cryo, a lot of radiation. So it might look like, she's more of a cryo DPS radiation, elemental build. But let's see what the other trees have. I hope that she is like that. But I feel like, having to build a character with only those 2 elements in mind will hinder you fighting bosses. Some bosses might, heavily resist cryo, even with the elemental res shred. I think it'll still be a tough thing to do, but let's see.
mod, it could be boosted even further. We deal increased gun damage based on the overshield. The more overshield we have, the bigger the gun damage bonus. That's also pretty cool. Whenever Harlowe deals radiation damage to an enemy, she gains increased action skill damage. Now, if that seems familiar, that's because earlier on, any enemy that is taking radiation damage, we also do extra gun damage. So this is also really nice, ramping up your action skill damage basically as much as possible. This is just cooldown rate for shooting an entangled enemy, and entangled is the status effect that Harlowe does proc with her ultimate, which will just share the damage to other targets that are entangled. And absolute zero is something that kind of caught my eye. When you freeze an enemy, she receives a stack of 0 point. For every stack of 0 point, her action skill duration freezes for a short time. So my thing is, when you freeze an enemy, the duration freezes, meaning it's not draining, meaning you could have your action skill up longer. Sounds a little complicated, but when you freeze something, your skill lasts longer, which I think is the easiest way to put it. This one's like a melee ability. I don't really see the appeal of this. Maybe Harlowe is secretly into melee, but dealing cryo or radiation melee damage just doesn't seem like it fits her kit all that much, but hey, I might be wrong. Another augment right here, giving her flux generator increased damage, action skill damage, based on the amount of allies and enemies that are inside of it, and it's 10% per. I wonder if this stacks indefinitely or has like an internal cap of 100%. Deal increased damage with all sources to entangled enemies. This one right here is going to be, remember Wrath of Nature from Wonderlands that Spore Warden had? I feel like this is going to be the same thing. If you have an enemy that is entangled, you're going to be dealing increased damage. If they are in the flux generator, it's even more. So I think if you get a 8 out of 5 class mod for this, if this damage is multiplicative, I see this being an absolutely insane skill for her. Another one for Harlowe here, the more overshield you have, the more damage you deal with basically everything you do. Feedback loop, whenever you entangle an enemy, she gains increased action skill damage, duration, and cooldown rate, keeping that action skill up as much as possible. And her first capstone, potential transference. Whenever Harlowe relocates her flux generator, it teleports to a location in her crosshairs, consuming a charge and creating a shock burst that deals shock damage to enemies inside of it and grants a free second win to allies and heals allies within the flux generator. This
Okay. Harlowe might be a character that you might want to use if you're playing with friends, but she does have good solo skills. Some skills are good for solo, but it mainly looks like if you have allies, she can be like the best character on the floor or, in the game at the moment. If you use her right, you can get a bunch of, stacking damage increases with a flux generator, when your enemies or even allies are in. You can deal massive damage, go crazy. But yeah, she looks like she has skills that rely on friends, enemies a little bit, but more friends. But she could be a good solo player.
is basically, in my opinion, it's very reminiscent of Maya rezzing you, but in like Harlowe's own little way. And I think this is going to be really cool. A lot of shock damage. I'm excited to see that. And another passive here, just increased status effect chance. And whenever Harlowe applies a status effect to an enemy, it becomes entangled. This is a free way to get entanglement without using your ability, to the point where if you have a grenade that has a high status effect chance and hits a lot of enemies in a room.
What do you guys think the level cap will be on day one? Because these skill trees, they're very large. There's a lot you can spec. I feel like even in one skill tree, you can spec up to like level 50. But maybe the level cap for day one will be level 50. Because maybe they want you to try out all the skill trees, throughout, and then they'll increase. But I feel like in this Borderlands, we will have our largest level cap, maybe, about the same as Borderlands 2 level 80 without extra DLC. Probably level 80 will be level cap. But it'll be crazy if, level 90. Level 90 would be crazy. That's a lot of skill points. But I feel level 80 will be the level cap. Write in the comments what you guys think the level cap will be.
room, you could toss a grenade and get everything in that room entangled without the need of proccing your actual ability. And I think that's absolutely insane, and I'm really excited to see the green tree. Definitely the first tree I'm going to go into. Another one, whenever she triggers her action skill, the next shot is fired from her gun, drains her shield, basically an amp shield skill if you want to use single target, maybe snipers or all that stuff. Nuclear Winter, an augment. When Harlowe and her allies are inside the flux generator radius, they deal increased cryo damage. However, whenever Harlowe and her allies leave the radius, they instead deal radiation damage for the duration, and it's 25%. This is also another ability that allows us to apply Entangled onto an enemy without using our action skill anytime we inflict a cryo or radiation status effect, which I think is going to be more important than people are just now realizing. Increased gun handling, I just kind of ignore these skills. I move on from that. This one right here makes me happy. It's called Jaunt. Press and hold whatever button to make Harlowe swap places with her flux generator. That, I feel, has a lot of potential for movement, a lot of potential for survivability, and possibly getting out of the map. This one's pretty cool. Critical funding. Whenever Harlowe critically hits an enemy, she gains a chance to entangle it, which is another way for us to entangle, and refills a portion of her gun's magazine. Just like I said, a lot of ways for her to entangle enemies without her ultimate. When her shield is down, she gains increased status effect chance. Not something I would spec into because it requires you to die unless there's some.
I feel like having an entangled build will go crazy. Constantly applying entanglement. No, Will Smith. Constantly applying entanglement and, with your guns to enemies without using your action skill, and then you still have your action skill to apply even more and, damage jumping between enemies. Yeah, Hollow's going to be like a crowd control type of character. Very good crowd control type of character. Maybe if you go into like arenas, slaughter shaft, things like that, combat arenas, yeah, you'll clear those very easily. But we'll see. I hope there's like a DLC that has like combat arenas, so you can use maximum output on Harlowe, because I feel like with how hard the game is, the Vault Hunters have to kind of scale with the game and do a lot of damage. But we'll see.
Like a Rough Rider in the game. For her second capstone in Green Tree, we have Violent Horizon. Harlowe's flux generator occasionally shoots out radiation projectiles at nearby enemies outside of its radius. These projectiles irradiate an enemy, and the flux generator then drags them within the radius. This is absolutely crazy. It makes a singularity on retrigger, and this is the nuke button. I think this is the nuke button that Harlowe has, okay? And another reason that capstone is so good is earlier on, remember when we irradiate enemies, there's a chance to entangle them? Like I said, there's a lot of ways for her to do that. Critical hits deal bonus radiation damage. This is all just radiation and cryo. Refraction. You remember Ricochet Witch? Remember Ricochet anything? Harlowe and her allies gain Ricochet chance against entangled enemies. Why is this good? Critical hits double the chance. Okay, but listen, the thing I think is going to be really nice about this is enemies that are entangled already share damage from each other. That's how entangled works. If we add bullet ricocheting in between the entangled targets, are we setting ourselves up for like infinite damage here? Because if two targets are entangled and they both take the damage from each other and those bullets keep bouncing back to each other, I think you see where I'm going with this. That skill.
No, I feel like the bullets, well, it depends what weapon you use. If you use non-elemental, I feel like the damage won't stack. I feel like the entanglement, they share damage, but there's a limit. It will stack, but I feel like the ricochet is a whole separate side of damage, so I don't think it's gonna be like prime ricochet witch, spiritual driver Amara with the recursion. Yeah, but I don't think it'll be at that level. But if it is, Harlowe, she probably will get nerfed, same as Amara.
Is another one to keep your eye on. Perpetual Engine is another augment that Harlowe activates her flux generator. She gains damage reduction and increased action skill duration for each entangled enemy, and each additional enemy she entangles while her action skill is active. That's not a bad augment, but out of all these augments, I'm more leaning towards the one that allows us to get the guaranteed status effect chance, but that's just me personally. Another one, Harlowe just gains increased critical hit damage. Harlowe and her allies gain lifesteal against entangled enemies. Whenever Harlowe does action skill damage, she restores a portion of her and her allies' shields. If your shields are full, that's a way to generate overshield. Another passive where your flux generator will occasionally throw out grenades, but if you or the allies are inside that, it throws a copy of your own grenade, which I think is going to be could lead to some potential game breaking things. And then finally, the thing I want, the thing I'm going for, group study. Harlowe spawns a Halo sidekick. For each ally, instead of her flux generator, Halo sidekicks automatically fly to each ally and hover near them, granting increased gun damage, fire.
Yeah, you see, very, team-based, team-focused type of character. Yeah, that final capstone, I won't be touching that. I won't be touching that. I'm a solo type player. I like solo raid bossing and all that. But I still will use Harlowe, not Harlowe, Harlowe, as my first character. But yeah, very team based, very team based.
Rate and reload speed. On retrigger, overload the Halo sidekick to increase their effects. But while they are overloaded, the action skill duration drains faster. But you notice the duration rate, the reload speed, the fire rate, and the gun damage is per activation. So if we have a crap ton of action skill duration, are you telling me I could just press the action skill 3 times and get 75% gun damage, 60% fire rate, 90% reload speed? Because if that's the case, this is the first thing I'm going.
Oh, but if you can't do that to yourself, oh, damn. Yeah, it's gonna be crazy. It's gonna be crazy. But yeah, we'll see when the game comes out in like, how many days now? 12? I think 12. No, it's not 12. What am I saying? It's like 14 or 13. How many ever days?
I'm going for. You best be known. This is the first thing I am going for on her. And then the last thing here is just action skills cooling down. You get reload speed and fire rate. All right, for all you Maya players, this is the phase lock for Harlowe, 0 point, which is going to be her blue tree. When you hover these people up into the air, enemies immune to status take damage instead. But one thing
I feel like I'll use the green tree for the skills, but I'll be using probably the red tree for the ability, the nuke ability. I feel like I'll be using that. But yeah, I'll see what build I make. Because I have to make a build that can boss and raid. I mean, raid boss and take out mobs easily. But yeah, this one, this is too like reminiscent of the Siren. Like in Borderlands 2, Maya had the same thing. Amara had the same thing, Vex is a different Siren. She doesn't have that, phase grasp. But, Harlowe basically is like a second Siren in this game. Or we can say fifth playable Siren, sort of, with her abilities. But yeah.
that we could look into here is re-triggering it, slams them back into the ground. Not a lot of you are going to get this reference, but do you know Oberon in Warframe? When he activates his one ability that picks everyone up and stomps them? Basically the same thing. The first skill, whenever Harlowe entangles an enemy, she gains health regeneration, basic survivability skill. After triggering or re-triggering an action skill, Harlowe gains increased gun damage. That's going to be really huge. Harlowe gains increased action skill cooldown rate, obviously really good. Harlowe gains critical hit chance with all skills. All skills. This chance increases every time Harlowe entangles an enemy. That's actually really nice. Harlowe gains increased
That skill is gonna be crazy. Getting criticals with all skills, everything. Oh, I feel like a Jacob's Torg type of build. That would be crazy. Yeah, critical hits plus stickies plus ricochet plus elemental. Oh, it's gonna go crazy.
elemental damage, status effect, application chance, and cryo effectiveness. That just makes her better at everything, actually. That's actually cool. I like that little logo they did for elemental damage to let you know it's literally every element possible. The first augment in Blue Tree is whenever an enemy enters stasis, spawn a homing rejuvenating projectile that targets Harlowe and her allies once the enemy is slammed, killed, or stasis ends. The rejuvenating projectile grants decreased action skill duration rate and increased action skill cooldown rate for the duration if the target is in fight for your life, then immediately gains second radiant wind as if they killed an enemy. That's really nice. That's really cool. I mess with that. Yeah, for survivability, I would like that. Well, let's look more into the other augments in Blue Tree and see if that's really the winner here. Harlowe gains increased gun handling. This bonus is doubled when in stasis. I'm never a big fan of the handling perks. When Harlowe shoots an enemy with a gun, bolt.
People sleep on gun handling, especially. Remember that weapon from Borderlands 3? What is it called? The pistol. The light show. Yeah, the light show. Gun handling, basically, you see the light show shoots in like a circular pattern, and it's kind of wide, you know. It's not really good for long range, but very good up close. Basically like a shotgun pistol, or fully automatic shotgun pistol. So, with the handling skill, you spec into it as much as you can. It decreases the crosshair and makes the hip fire, the spread of the bullets much tighter. If there's gonna be a gun like that in Borderlands 4, and it's very strong, handling will really, really help it. Hopefully people don't find it, or it's not in the game within the first few months, because it will get nerfed. It probably will be in like DLCs or something, or they'll bring back the light show from Borderlands 3. But handling is underrated. Specking a few skills into a little bit of handling will help you in terms of, weapons with wide spread, like even shotguns. The spread will become tighter. You can use shotguns from a longer distance, easier to hit crits. Yeah, but people sleep on handling.
Bullets ricochet off that enemy onto all enemies in stasis. If Harlowe critically hits an enemy, that enemy becomes entangled. Now this is interesting. This is different from the other ricochet over into Green Tree, because this one doesn't say the ricochets have reduced damage. If other enemies are inside of stasis, is it full damage that's ricocheted? Because if that's the case, that's basically ties that bind to Mara from Borderlands 3, and if that would go hard. That would go unequivocally hard. Whenever Harlowe triggers or retriggers an action skill, she gains increased fire rate. I like the fire rate abilities. Anything that makes you shoot faster, I'm just a sucker for. Ripple effect kill skill. Whenever Harlowe kills an entangled enemy, automatically entangle another nearby enemy. That's cool. Critical hit damage increase. That's very nice. Action skill cooldown rate. Every time you deal cryo damage, Harlowe gains increased cryo damage just flat out. Harlowe gains increased action skill duration for every entangled enemy. The next augment is Wildcat Destabilization. Entangled enemies take bonus radiation damage from entangle. Whenever Harlowe deals radiational gun damage to an enemy, restore action skill duration.
Yeah, so as you guys can see, a lot of cryo radiation skills, like a lot. I feel like, yeah, getting like a cryo radiation build plus entanglement and ricochet, yeah, it's a lot, and I don't think you'll be able to, get that final build on the first day or the first few months until they increase the level cap. But Harlowe is looking really good in terms of elements. Because I know radiation is good on everything except, what is it called? The yellow health bar armor health. It really struggles with that. But cryo destroys armor health. So maybe Harlowe might. She could be one of, like, the best vault hunter, I won't lie. But Amon and Vex are still, kind of mysterious. Amon could probably be the best vaulters, I'm not gonna lie. But right now it's between Harlowe and Amon.
So basically, keep your action skill up while your action skill is up by killing things, kind of like Flag does with Gamma Burst with that one augment. And whenever you kill an enemy in stasis, you create a Radiation Nova. That seems like the winner so far in terms of augments for the Blue Tree. Whenever Harlowe critically hits an enemy, daze that enemy. I haven't seen dazing enemies since like old school Borderlands, like the first Borderlands. Like if the enemy was lower than you, you had a chance to daze them, so that's cool to see. Whenever Harlowe dazes an enemy, you also entangle them and then increase your movement speed. Okay, now we're moving into some movement. I was worried Harlowe's main character thing would be very bad with movement, but it's nice to see some movement speed skills finally in the Blue Tree. Killing an entangled enemy restores a portion of Harlowe's action skill cooldown and action skill duration. I like that a lot. Freeze Frame is a 1-point passive that just makes us do increased cryo damage for every enemy she has in stasis, so it just gives your gun cryo even if it isn't a cryo weapon. I think this could have some use cases that I could see being pretty damn interesting. Falling Bodies places an additional enemy enemy in stasis at the cost of action skill duration. When stasis ends, automatically slam all enemies straight down. As a capstone, I probably wouldn't want that. Maybe if you want the additional enemies, like you've seen in the trailer where she's like phase locking 4 people. If that's what this is, then yes, I can see why that is wanted. Whenever Harlowe critically hits an enemy, she briefly puts that enemy into stasis. This form of stasis lasts for a short duration or until the enemy is shot again. Probably wouldn't get that based on...
Yeah. A lot of crit, cryo, radiation, entanglement. Yeah, elemental skills. So Harlowe can, like, her skills are sounding very wild. I'm not gonna lie. In terms of increasing critical damage, increasing cryo, increasing radiation, increasing entanglement, ricochet. Yeah, she's gonna go crazy.
On reading the other things. Kill skill. Harlowe deals bonus cryo damage with all sources after she gets a kill. Just feeding into this cryo character. Even in the green tree, cryo and radiation was like the main thing, so I understand where she's coming from. I'm curious if her red tree, when we get into it, is going to be the same way, but if she's only cryo and radiation, I would be kind of surprised, but we'll see. All damage dealt to enemies in stasis is stored. Whenever an enemy is slammed or stasis ends, create a cryo explosion based on all stored damage centered on that enemy, and also automatically freeze other nearby enemies. That's a winner. That's a winner for augments so far. Keep ice on that. All cryo damage Harlowe deals gains life. Dude, this tree, the more I read it, is insanely ridiculous. And she gains overshield if her health is full. Oh my, Harlowe, this is nice. This is nice. I like the cryo character. I'm liking it so far. Whenever you freeze an enemy, she gains increased action skill cooldown rate. Whenever we deal cryo damage with an action skill, she gains increased chance to freeze that enemy. Whenever Harlowe freezes an enemy, she creates a endothermic aura that deals constant cryo damage to enemies around it, and it deals increased damage based on her overshield, which we can get from the other one when we deal cryo damage to begin with. Oh my jeez. Harlowe, she is so good. This is ridiculous. This is awesome. I'm loving the whole playstyle. So I'm getting excited reading this. Whenever we deal non-cryo damage to an entangled enemy, she deals bonus cryo damage to that enemy. If she deals cryo damage to an entangled enemy, she deals increased bonus damage. Just another skill incentivizing you to do cryo damage. And then the capstone. Whenever Harlowe slams an enemy, create a singularity on that enemy followed by a cryo explosion. If that Nova gets all the cryo benefits previously stated on the whole blue tree, I could see this just being AoE clear, freeze the whole map in one button type of thing. Harlowe gains increased splash damage. I like to see it since we're doing cryo with all these Novas. That splash damage in theory should be boosting the Nova damage on all those abilities. Another augment, whenever an enemy Harlowe has in stasis dies, a new enemy is automatically added to stasis. When this happens, your action skill duration resets. However, it drains quicker. That's just for optimal uptime. I could see this being useful and chaining into a large area, but like I said, if we could just nuke the whole map once, there's really no need for that. Killing an entangled enemy causes an elemental explosion on all other entangled enemies. I'm hoping that elemental explosion is cryo, or just very indicative of what gun you're using to begin with. Another kill skill, killing an entangled enemy restores a portion of your action skill duration, just keeping it up as long as possible. Whenever we deal splash damage to an entangled enemy, she gains a chance to trigger a entangled damage share again. Ooh, that goes up to 45%. I'm wondering if you can get a class mod to make that 6 out of 3 and get a 90% second trigger on your entanglement. That could be a crazy ricochet build. And then the final capstone for blue tree is every time Harlowe slams an enemy, she gains increased slam damage radius, and enemies in stasis take decreased damage. Slam all enemies in stasis straight down with the F button, and the radius and the damage per slam is just very high. It looks like the way she works in
Imagine, like, I'm hearing a lot of slam, and this would be the first ever Borderlands slam build. That'd be crazy. But I don't think it'll work on bosses due to their size. But if it does, that'd be crazy. A slam build sounding crazy. But yeah, let me know if you guys want me to make, a slam build.
lame terms is having a very long uptime on her action skill, but also bursting it. So you could either play it to have it constantly up and slowly use it, or do a bunch of damage and then force yourself onto cooldown. But by the looks of it, you want to build up your action skill duration and then use it so you have optimal uptime. But if she's the character, I don't know if all the other Vault Hunters are like this. I haven't really looked into the other ones. If she's the one that wants to optimally keep up her action skill at all times, I am all for it. And for the final skill in Blue Tree, whenever we kill an entangled enemy, there's a chance to instantly instantly restore our action skill to full. That's, yeah, I was right. What I just said, I was right about that. And now we have Red Tree, which is going to be her big old nuke that we seen that like it charges up and then goes
This
like
is the one that I want to, spec into. But let's see this.
pew pew, and then yeah, I explained that terribly in the trailer. The big ball that everyone freaked out about, that's the Red Tree, and we're gonna go over that now. She has just increased that was increased fire rate just for doing nothing. Increased maximum shield capacity and shield recharge rate, so we got some survivability skills going. Increased status effect chance, that's always good, especially if we want to double dip into the cryo. Action skill damage just flat out. Increased reload speed. A lot of these are just flat buffs. 4 of these past 5 are just flat buffs to your character for doing nothing, which makes me think maybe this is the main tree that they want people to go with, like the easy path, quote unquote. And I just noticed this. You can see here from the class mod, even if we're not spec'd into it, we are still spec'd into it, and it has these nice little icons. That is so nice. I really do enjoy that. But that's good to know that even if we're not spec'd into the skill, we still get the skill. First augment in the Red Tree being Harlowe's unstable energy pocket passes by an enemy. It loses a portion of its current total health and becomes frozen. So you just take 30% health from an enemy and then freeze them. That's pretty cool. The other augment is all the damage that the energy pocket deals is stored. Whenever it explodes, a portion of that stored damage is transferred to your gun, causing her to deal bonus radiation damage, and it's 10% of her action skill damage dealt. That, if you could scale the action skill damage into your gun, this seems like the boss melting tree, the single target, let's delete whatever boss we're looking at tree. So far, that's the vibe I get. We get increased elemental damage and status effect damage. More damage is always good. When we apply a status effect onto an enemy, we get action skill cooldown rate. Whenever we activate a retriggered action skill, we gain increased movement speed. Whenever our shields break, we deal radiation damage to all entangled enemies, and we gain overshield equal to the amount of damage dealt in that fashion. Another survivability skill. Another skill with status effect duration if we want to go for radiation builds. Increase radiation damage, once again for the radiation builds. Increase skill damage, which a lot of these are just flat.
The other element you guys have heard in this whole thing is shock, electric. No fire. What's the other one? Is there another element? You haven't heard about fire. Just cryo, radiation, and shock. You haven't heard about, fire. But even shock was barely even there. It's only cryo and radiation.
That out increases to your raw stats. Another augment we have here, whenever Harlowe kills an enemy in her unstable energy pocket, and then she kills an entangled enemy while her unstable energy pocket is active, that's a mouthful, refund a portion of her next action skill cooldown. Based on the enemies killed, I wonder if you just kill 5 enemies, you could just keep spamming it over and over again. If that's the case, that is pretty powerful. Whenever we
Also, you guys should let me know if you think the Vault Hunter, the 2 DLC Vault Hunters will be mid or great, because I want, personally, I want one of them to be like the strongest character in the game or contender for the strongest character in the game, because that will bring, variety, replayability too. But yeah, I hope the design is cool. They have a cool story. The skills are very different from what we get of the typical soldier, typical siren. Like Harlowe's skill is different. But we've always got the tank, the siren, and the soldier. And then normally we'd have a sniper, but Harlowe's sitting in that place. Someone who's good with a sniper. Borderlands 1, you had Mordecai. Borderlands 2, you had Zero, pre-sequel. Hammerlock's sister, whatever her name is, Aurora, whatever her name is. Borderlands 4, I don't think we had a sniper build, but if critical, which is flak. Yeah, so this Borderlands is the most different from, the others. But we'll see with the 2 new Vault Hunters.
Entangle an enemy, there's a chance to entangle another nearby enemy. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not shitting on Gearbox or anything, but a little assumption, maybe I'm wrong. I feel like I've read that skill about 4 times now. Do you guys feel that way? Let me know in the comments. Maybe I'm crazy, but I feel like there's been 4 of that type of skill where when you entangle an enemy, there's a chance to entangle another enemy. I feel like there's been 4 of those now. We gain lifesteal against frozen enemies. If she's at full health, gain overshield instead. Once again, I feel like we had that in the blue tree, if I'm not mistaken. In the blue tree, I believe we had that same exact skill. I'll have to look into that. Maybe I'll make a Twitter post based on that. Convert all chroma accelerator damage to cryo damage. Now that's what we're talking about. Cryo damage all the way. I feel like she's going to play really well with the cryo. Whenever Harlowe freezes an enemy, she gains increased action skill cooldown rate, which stacks. The first capstone. The pocket bounces as it travels and can no longer be manually detonated. Each time it bounces, it creates a radiation explosion. Whenever it strikes an enemy, it changes direction and bounces towards another enemy. I'm actually a fan of that. I think this is going to end up being pretty powerful as well. Increased radiation chance and damage. Another augment. The energy pocket pulls enemies along as it passes by, and its detonation deals increased damage for every enemy it has already hit. That could, if it stacks exponentially, that will be very powerful as well. We gain increased critical hit damage and status effect damage. When we damage a irradiated enemy or an entangled enemy, we shoot a radiation dart to another enemy. We deal bonus radiation damage to entangled enemies. We also, when we get a kill on a irradiated enemy or killing an enemy with radiation damage, it leaves behind a hazard, which I imagine is just a radiation puddle. For the second capstone, Demon Core. As the pocket travels, it shoots radiation darts at enemies. Whenever Harlowe entangles an enemy while her action skill is active, automatically irradiate that enemy. If it's just actually shooting out, like, you know, in Balloon Tower Defense attack shooter, if it's shooting out a bunch of those like that, then I could see that being really cool. Plus, with all the ways we could irradiate enemies in the blue tree, if we half spec over there, I feel like it would help out a radiation build pretty well. Whenever we irradiate an enemy, we create a explosion on that enemy, which is 40% of the total irradiated damage. I guess that's just a little bit more bonus AoE if you really need it. If we kill an enemy with a skill, we restore a portion of our shield capacity. And for the last augment in Red Tree, whenever our pocket detonates, it splits into several smaller, fast-moving, unstable energy pockets. That's cool. I mess with that. I'm a big fan of that. I like AoE. That I'm gonna vote. Right side Red Tree is gonna be probably where I would go if I go Red Tree. Whenever we deal damage with our skill, we gain increased skill damage. Okay, use your skill to do more skill. I have no complaints there. Whenever we enter fight for our life, we throw a free unstable energy pocket at a nearby enemy. That's cool. That's nice. That's like a Eureka. That's a great name for that skill. For every enemy our action skill damages, we gain increased gun damage when her action skill ends. That, you have to redefine print on that. Waiting for your action skill to end to get the gun damage, I guess, could be beneficial. But if we're building for a lot of action skill duration, then maybe it's not really worth putting into. Melee override. We attach an unstable energy pocket to our fist and slam it into an enemy in front of her. That explains the melee ability from earlier and why I asked about it. Okay, I get it now. That has some potential. And let's see the final capstone on Harlowe. Let's see the shattering lights. Chroma accelerator gains charges as Harlowe keeps it radiated for the duration. So we basically gain more charges for the ultimate, and holding F ends the shattering light early and refunds a portion of the cooldown for every charge remaining. So it looks like we shoot our ult and then we have 5 charges of just pew 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 using it. I'm wondering, I might seem stupid, but are you just kind of like recasting it 5 times? I may be really dumb or blind to that, but I'm gonna be so honest, I don't really know what that's saying. If anything, it sounds like you're using your ball 5 times more than you need to. But that's basically it. That's the build path, and 100% green tree is going to be where I go with this build. And for the people wondering, the flux generator is green tree, and that's just like the rainbow generator that makes a huge energy field. And I think for not only the quote-unquote minion potential and the very Wilhelm-esque override or overdrive ability over into the far right here, group study, I think is going to be the best ability on her. And from what I've heard, a little bird, during all of the gameplay and her, everyone's saying when it comes to her and single target bossing, it's kind of an annoyance because, as you can see with all these abilities, she's very ad clear centric. And I think group study is going to be, mark my words, when this game comes out, I'm gonna be making builds for it, but I think group study is going to be the thing that is going to help the most when it comes to boss fights, especially if you could stack this more than 3 or 4 times and get a bunch of gun damage and fire rate and reload speed. I could see this being very, very good. But that's my build path. I'm mainly going to be going green and blue just because I think green into blue is going to be the best way. I like the interactions. Red tree seems more like a flat stat tree with a lot of self bonuses, not as many things that are too intuitive. Like green tree, you're trying to freeze everything. Blue tree, you're freezing and irradiating everything. So I think cryo gun build with her is going to be the thing to do, at least for me. Let me know in the comments down below. Are you guys excited to be playing her? I'm going to be playing her exclusively. If you want,
Yeah, but that's the video. You guys should let me know what you think in the comments. Who you will play first, and if you're playing Harlowe, which tree are you gonna, spec the most into? I feel like I really want the red tree or the red skill and the red tree, but I know day one you won't have a lot of actions. I mean, a lot of skill points to spec into. But yeah, I will stream this on Twitch and probably YouTube. We will stream the story and get all the vault hunters to the max level for the first week or the first day. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.